Welcome to the 2025-26 season. Here are the top 10 storylines for the Florida Panthers.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, September 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. And as you can tell in my voice, I am excited. I am very pumped up. Recording this really early in the morning, already 2 cups of coffee, ready to just discuss everything in the world of the Cats because hockey season is here. This is the week that everybody will be returning to the rink. I mean, the guys have already returned to the rink last week with the captain's skate, while the rookies for the rookie showcase were on the ice practicing right before heading to Wesley Chapel, which we will be there later today for the game between the Florida Panthers and the Nashville Predators in Wesley Chapel. But man, is it exciting knowing that this team that has brought South Florida so much joy is going to be back, and we are going to have something very exciting to cheer for, especially with the current state of South Florida sports, especially on the pro scene with right now the Miami Dolphins being 0-2 right now, and their season not going the way that they planned. But today on the show, we are going to discuss we've discussed all the storylines throughout the summer for the Florida Panthers heading into this season. Now we are going to rank them as far as these are my personal rankings for the Florida Panthers heading into this year. And if you guys disagree or if you guys have something that I missed as well, make sure to let me know. And how would you have ranked it differently, and what would you have added onto this list? So we are gonna go 10-7, 6-4, and then 3-1 in the final segment. So we are going to discuss all that and more on today's show. So the 10th biggest storyline for the Florida Panthers heading into this season is how do they handle a very road-heavy schedule towards the back half of the year. And the NHL did the Florida Panthers quite a few favors already with having them at home, lessening the travel to at least get their bodies acclimated back to a regular schedule. So what's going to be happening? How do the Panthers take advantage of that? The Panthers only have one back-to-back in the month of October and November, and that comes in the second week of the season when they go to Detroit and Philadelphia in the second week. And then after that, no back-to-backs throughout the rest of the month and all of November. The Panthers will actually have 4 back-to-backs in December, and 3 of the 4 back-to-backs will be where both ends will be at home. Some in the beginning of the month, and then there's that one in the very end of the month between them and the Washington Capitals and Montreal Canadiens right before the Winter Classic later in early January. And by the time that we get to December, there'll be 39 games completed for the Panthers. I mean, the Winter Classic will be game number 40, and 24 of those 39 will be at home. So, and then after the new year, the Panthers' longest homestand will be 3 games. The Panthers won't have a lot of matinees later in the season. Most of their matinees will be coming on the road, actually. I think the earliest matinee that they have is a game against the Columbus Blue Jackets at 3:30 on a Saturday. But which I believe honestly is better for the body for hockey players because they're so used to playing these evening hockey games as well. So maybe that's an advantage for the Panthers there. So that's a storyline for the Cats. Number 9 on the list, the Panthers are expected to have the most players represented in the Winter Olympics. So when you look at up and down the Panthers roster, you look at guys who are probably going to be, if healthy, the Panthers are going to have guys repeating on from last year's Four Nations, and then also making the team this year in for their respective international clubs for the Winter Olympics. We expect the four Finns: Barkov, Eetu Luostarinen, Lundell, Nico Mikkola. They're going to be part of Team Finland. Gustav Forsling for Sweden. If Matthew Tkachuk is healthy for USA, you're going to have Uvis Belinskis for Team Latvia there. Sam Bennett is last year at this time, I didn't think that he was going to make Team Canada, but after the start that he had, he's and then winning the Conn Smythe, you likely think that he's going to be part of the team. Brad Marchand, although he's a year older, that's a name that is going to be that really fits into the identity of what Canada wants to bring. Most of the team for Canada is very fast youth, but you need some veteran presence there. And also, do guys like Carver Hagee or Aaron Ekblad crack the lineup for Team Canada? Does Seth Jones crack the lineup for Team USA? There's also a chance there. Tomáš Nosek, will he play for Team Czechia in the Winter Olympics as well? So there's also that chance for those guys to be part of their respective teams as well. So the Panthers, they had 8 last year. It's going to be more than 8 this year. So they're not really going to have a break in between the regular season and the Olympic break coming in mid-February for them. Number 8 biggest storyline for the Florida Panthers heading into the 2025-26 season. How do the Panthers fare to being the hunted once again, especially against the younger teams in the Eastern Conference, and especially their division? Because Ottawa is a team that has finally broken through to trying to get to the playoffs. Now it's about capitalizing. I mean, the Panthers, the foundational season for the Ottawa Senators was last year. I think of the Panthers and starting to lay the foundation for them. I think of all the way back going into the 2021 season, first year under Bill Zito. Anton Lundell was just getting drafted. Although he didn't play that season with the Panthers, they were starting to build things up as far as building themselves to becoming champions. I mean, they were starting to figure out how they want to play as well. So that is one. Those are a few teams that are on their way up. Montreal as well. Still questions about depth at center, but they still have other pieces around that surrounding the position that is pretty up there as far as the younger teams trying to break through. So how do they fare against them? And also Tampa Bay is still a force. Toronto, although they lost Mitch Marner, I don't think it's that far of a step back that they're not going to make the playoffs. I still think that they're a great team. They might be a worse regular season team, but who knows? They could be a better postseason team. Mitch Marner hasn't been a team. Mitch Marner hasn't been a player that has shown up really in the postseason. So who picks up that slack? Does it make more room for Austin Matthews to put more of his superstardom at full display? Same thing with William Nylander, who has killed the Panthers and has also shown up in the postseason as well. So that's a team that I'm very interested in of how they go through the regular season. Also, although Toronto is a big pressure cooker, I feel like the level of pressure, because there won't be as many consequences this time around, is going to go down a bit. And I feel like that team could possibly play a little more free. There is that possibility. So how do the Panthers manage that? How do they wake up throughout the regular season as far as teams trying to play their best against them? I mean, you can even include Western Conference teams like a San Jose, Chicago, even though they haven't really spent to surround Connor Bedard. So how do they wake up for those games? So that's going to be very interesting. Number 7 is going to be picking up the slack. Every year, there's always someone who is going to regress. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk had an insane first season with the Panthers numbers wise, and then he started to take a little bit of a dip in numbers, and then Sam Reinhart, that's when he scored his 57 goals and started to really be a force on special teams. I mean, he was a force even before that, but really put on full display with those 8 straight regular season games of a special teams goal for the Panthers in January of 2024. last year when Carter Verhaeghe took a step back, it was Sam Bennett who picked up the slack for the Panthers. So no Matthew Tkachuk. You expect that Carter Verhaeghe is going to rebound from a down regular season last year, but is he going to be able to pick that up? And who else is going to take that step? And we'll actually tie this into a player later, because some of these tie together. So if you're thinking of a certain name, hang on to that, because I'm going to get to them in just a little bit here on the podcast. But we got a lot more to get to on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, is continuing the discussion of the biggest storylines for the Cats. We'll discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And you just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday? You can find amazing candidates fast, easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. And I've been in a spot where I've needed to hire someone, and the pressure is on. Every day without the right person is a setback, and that's exactly what Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen and right by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Segment number 2 here on this Monday, September 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So, the sixth biggest storyline for the Florida Panthers coming into the 2025-26 season is, how do the special teams get handled? And it's not just the top unit. How does the second unit go? How does the PK? How do the PK guys? How do they get assembled, and how things will look probably later on in the season, when there's probably that a trade more likely, when the Panthers do have to get cap compliant with Matthew Tkachuk possibly coming back. And for the Panthers, we've seen them use the two defensemen on the power play, where with Seth Jones running the point. Aaron Ekblad has been the trigger man on that left flank. Do they put Mackie Semiskevich back there and have Aaron Ekblad shift to power play 2? Do they give Mackie Semiskevich an opportunity once again? He started the playoffs last year in that role, and then shifted all the way to the fourth line, and was only playing the top power play unit, and then was sheltered to the second. And then all of a sudden not all of a sudden, but it was expected that he was going to be a scratch. And that was a little bit of a shift. We saw Nate Schmidt run that second power play unit for the Cats, and now Jeff Petrie, more of an offensive defenseman. Chances are that he is going to be that guy to run the second power play unit. And let's see. And second power play unit for the Panthers has carried this team throughout the 2025 postseason. So that was a big pick me up for the Panthers, especially in the Stanley Cup final, which I thought was fairly impressive there. And that was a big step into how the Panthers broke the record for most time leading throughout a championship series. So big responsibility on Sylvain Lefebvre, who runs the PK for the Panthers, with Jesper Boquist and Eetu Luostarinen mostly being together on that front, and then Brad Marchand and Anton Lundell being together when the Panthers do go on the PK. Obviously, you can't always have the same groupings together, because sometimes it'll be those guys who will be going to the box for the Cats. So how does Sylvain Lefebvre run that unit for the penalty kill for the Panthers? And if it eventually ends up with Jesper Boquist being traded for the Panthers to get cap compliant, they still have options, thankfully, with Tomas Nosek being able to to play those PK minutes in place of Jesper Boquist. Tomas Nosek will likely be paired with Eetu Luostarinen. We'll likely still see Lundell and Marchand together, Sam Reinhart, Alexander Barkov. How and so we will see how that unit fares, because it's still a pretty big part about how the Panthers stop the opposition's momentum, and that they are able to build something on their own, just getting a goal right after a big kill for them. So number 5 biggest storyline for the Panthers in this upcoming season is goaltending splits. uh as a observer and a fan of this team, I was very comfortable with seeing the workload that Sergei Bobrovsky had with Spencer Knight, and then eventually Vitek Vanacek. The Four Nations break came at a great time where he was just able to work on his routine. The year before, he had 58 starts for the Cats, but as he's getting a little older, has gone through multiple playoff runs, and Daniil Tarasov, right going right into his prime, being 26 years old, he had not started more than 23 games in his career. Those 23 games came 2 years ago, and that was the same season where he had a career high in save percentage. Obviously, the Columbus Blue Jackets are in a different position than the Florida Panthers as far as trying to build and contend. But can Daniil Tarasov handle that workload for the Panthers? That's going to be interesting to see for how that gets handled, and can he take that next step? There's still questions on 1-year contract for Sergei Bobrovsky after this year. Is there going to be an heir apparent there? Is it Tarasov? Is it going to be Cooper Black, Kirill Gasimchuk, in which both of those are expected to be in the AHL, or is it someone outside of the organization that eventually will be that for the Panthers? So that's going to be very interesting to see, to keep eyes on the present and eyes on the future, although they are going for 3 championships in a row. So that I think that's going to be, I think with the Panthers winning back-to-back chips, I think that's a very interesting once again discussion on what the present and the future is going to look like, because that's something that we are always going to consistently talk about, because the way we are talking about the current state of the team, and we've talked about even present and future years before they got into winning a championship, and not necessarily forecasting it, but seeing the different habits that the front office and the coaching staff have put together and have implemented in order to get to their ultimate goal, and also keeping the sustainability. So we are looking at these in order to see how they get to where they will eventually get is, and will obviously we have an opportunity to look back at all of these as well, which is also the great thing about it. Number 4, internal growth. And like I said earlier, for certain lines and certain guys missing, you're gonna have to rely on other players to pick up some of the slack. I talked about Carter Verhaeghe earlier. I talked about Sam Bennett having to pick that up, but there's still a little bit of development that the Panthers are going to be reliant on, and that is a big one in Mackie Samoskevich. How much does he grow this season? Still getting some seasoning. He was given more responsibilities last year for the Cats, playing as high as the second line for a big stretch of time. That's a big hole with Matthew Tkachuk missing for at least the first 3 months of the season. And this is that opportunity where I'm saying, quote, "It's your time to shine, kid." That's where I'm thinking that with the Panthers dishing out first round picks like it's candy, and you're at a doctor's office, the Panthers have kept 2 big first round picks that Bill Zito has drafted in his first few years of becoming the general manager, Anton Lundell and Mackie Samoskevich. Mackie, although he didn't have really negotiating rights for the Panthers, that he didn't really have the leverage. Let me say that correctly. He didn't really have the leverage as far as negotiating his contract, and you just had to fit him into the Panthers cap situation in the present. But he'll be able to get a significant raise in the future that will reward him. And taking less now, I feel, will reward him a little later, as he's going to be arbitration eligible come next year. He's not waivers exempt this year, so he is going to be on the team. He is going to get some games. He is going to be given opportunities for top minutes, both in even strength and on special teams. So can he take that next step as far as Panthers needed on the cheap in order to continue the Panthers, to extend the Panthers contention window? So that's another thing for the Panthers that is very necessary in order to just still keep things afloat when sometimes things might be looking doubtful for the Panthers throughout times this season, and we might question whether this team will be ready, because we have to go through the journey, which is the fun part about all of this. That's what I enjoy the most about. That's what I've enjoyed, excuse me, the most between these two championships. The journey that has gotten to there, and part of the journey is seeing how other players have grown throughout their time with the Panthers, not only as hockey players but as people as well, and then they are able to contribute to something bigger than themselves with an organization that has been just committed to winning and also growing the brand in this community as well. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we're going to discuss the 3 biggest storylines, in my opinion, that the Florida Panthers the 3 biggest storylines for the Florida Panthers 2025-2026 season, as we are less than a week from the first preseason game for the Cats. We'll discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and the NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you can get $300 in bonus bets across the app. And I love using FanDuel because it fits the live bets, the same game parlays, player props, and even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game exciting, whether I'm watching the Miami Dolphins, although they are not in a great state right now, or other teams that might have a better chance to win the Super Bowl. FanDuel is my place to go. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Third and final segment here on this Monday, September 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So the third biggest storyline for the Panthers heading into this season is, how do the guys who are rumored to be traded, when the Panthers do eventually get there to needing to be cap compliant when Matthew Tkachuk is healthy, does the pressure get to them? And we've spoken so much about Evan Rodriguez. Yes, Boquist. I do think that although the salary does fit for Eetu Luostarinen to be traded, I doubt that he's a piece that the Panthers will eventually trade, especially because a year left on his contract, especially with the cap going up even more to $104 million. Eetu Luostarinen will take up less than 1% of the Panthers cap next year. So that is a player that you keep. You do not. That is one player that you don't keep around. I mean, with how dominant that third line was throughout this last year with Luostarinen, Lundell, and Marchand, that why break that up when that was really one that really took them over the top, and the difference between them being on the ice and that all 3 can play defense. But how do the other guys handle it? Evan Rodriguez is going to get a chance on the second power play unit, more than likely, second line minutes. So second line is projected to be Rodriguez, Bennett, Semiskevich. And as far as that, you don't have as much of a net front presence as far as the wingers for that second line. you'll have Sam Bennett as the guy there, but you have more of perimeter-based shooters in Rodriguez and Mackey, two right-handed shots. So how does that line fare? How does Evan Rodriguez how does he carry that line? Does he need to be on the top line and for the Panthers to work with Alexander Barkov and switch with Carter Verhaeghe in order to bring that second line a little bit of more scoring, which if Evan Rodriguez is on the top line with Barkov and Reinhart, those two can focus mostly on playing defense. And then whenever they bring the puck up the ice, you give a little bit more space for those two to possibly play make to Evan Rodriguez, and he can provide more offensively. So chances are you're going to see some mixing and matching throughout the first part of the season. But how does he handle that? I mean, especially with a young family, for Erod, young kids, and it's not easy to be a hockey player and to have to move in the middle of the year. So how do they handle that part of it? And Jesper Boquist as well. That's where the money makes sense for the Panthers to be cap compliant and to trade those two guys. The Panthers will have 22 by the time, assuming that everybody is healthy. This is only assuming that if the Panthers get there. So this is the first big contract that Jesper Boquist has had. At times, we saw him fill the second line wing, shift to center, and I expect Alexander Barkov to not play a full 82. So in the games that Barkov misses, Anton Lundell is going to be expected to go to the top line. Probably it's going to be a line of Eetu Luostarinen, Lundell, and Reinhart on that top line. If Barkov is missing, you'll have that third line of probably Jesper Boquist, Evan Rodriguez, and Brad Marchand, somewhere around there. And then you have Verhaeghe, Bennett, and Samoskevich in a game where Barkov is hurt, because I don't expect them to play all 82 games. That we just haven't seen that in a while for the captain. So that's another thing about how they take the pressure, and it doesn't affect them when they get on the ice. They might be questioned with it during media sessions, during in the locker room. That it's probably someone's probably going to bring it up. A lot of people like myself know, so uh, someone will want to see what's inside of their head and how they're processing things, even though the Panthers are truly a day-to-day type of approach when it comes to how they handle their business and trying to win the day. I know that's an Oregon Ducks football reference, but that is really important in how you eventually end up winning a championship and how they've ended up winning back-to-back in these last 2 years. Number two, the second biggest storyline for the Panthers is how long will it take for Matthew Tkachuk to be in proper game shape? And when he does return to the ice, how long will it take to be his normal self? I mean, it's still incredible how Matthew was able to just start off with a bang in the Tampa Bay series, just playing 12 minutes, averaging that throughout the first round, and then uh, ramping it up a little more as far as his time on ice, and doing that with the adductor injury and the sports hernia. But it's a little different when you're actually go through the procedure. You're on crutches, and you're having to go through the rehab process of just getting your body to the proper movements. And then he's going to get some time getting stick on pucks, skating, and then eventually going through drills. But those drills are a lot different from actual game speed. So this is the most significant injury that Matthew Tkachuk has gone through so far in his career. So will he be back into his self when he does return to the ice? And I'm very interested. Although the timeline does say the first few months, mid-January, sometimes those are timelines that are longer than expected as far as being given to the public. But I just wonder if Matthew Tkachuk is going to do his absolute best to try to return before the Winter Classic. Although fans would want for him to be ready for when the season really does matter for the Panthers, it's also going to depend on where they are as well. Because if they are by the time we get to January and they are in, if they are on the bubble, you might see him try to return earlier. But obviously, the doctors have a lot of say into it. Matthew Tkachuk will have a little bit of a say of whether he feels good, whether he believes that he can move well across the ice. I mean, yeah, he did it throughout a a 23 game playoff run for the Panthers, and that team still ended up scoring 94 goals. Matthew Tkachuk was still a big contributor there, but he's going to say that he feels good because he just wants to play. But if in the case that uh the team doctors do have to interfere, uh I want what's best for the player and I want what's best for the team. And if he is actually not, the can the staff, can the medical staff save Kachuk from himself? Because uh, although I do believe that the Panthers did owe Matthew Kachuk an opportunity to play for Team USA, and even though he was hurt in the first Canada USA game, I said they owe him everything. He brought the Panthers a Stanley Cup. He deserves to make the decision for himself on whether he wants to play in that championship game back on February 20th. And it didn't hurt the Panthers, thankfully. But still, if if in the situation that it comes again, will they have the guts to save him from himself, or will they be willing to trust him as far as making the proper call and judgment? And will he do that for himself? And Matthew Tkachuk, he comes from a hockey family. He's all about the team. He's also probably going to think of not being a distraction as far as his play from the injury, and also he's going to calculate this to the best that he can. So he's the ultimate pro when it comes to what to whether about knowing his body and whether he's going to be a factor for the team. He had the injury the other in the 2023 final. So when he broke the sternum, he said there was going to be 18 other players more effective than me. So he's got that maturity down for himself. And number one is, how do they deal with trying to make history to this season? We've said it to the lead up of this episode. It's cup or bust once again for the Panthers. Although we will be sad, we as Panther fans will be content because they finally brought a championship to South Florida. They've won back to back. They're the most relevant team in this market. But you have a chance to do something that nobody has done in 40 years and nobody has done in the cap era. How do the Panthers fare throughout the season? Keep it at trying to make the playoffs, trying to get healthy, and then once they get to game 1 in mid-April, how do they handle each day, each series? And obviously the fact that the pressure will be on. It will be more, like I said last week, internal pressure for the Panthers to complete the mission and to get it done and to make history, to be remembered for decades. And there are children watching this team uh, who are around like 8 to 10 years old, who are going to possibly live until they're 70 and 80, and they can talk about the Florida Panthers. So this has an opportunity for, as far as the legacy and a team that could be talked about for over half a century, and saying, yeah, the Islanders did it pre-cap, but there's one team that stands hopefully alone in completing it, and people are going to talk about the first in this era if the Panthers complete it, and for it to be associated with South Florida, that is something that I would have never imagined. And that's why the focus needs to be solely on trying to get that third. But you can't get to April until you get to October. So how do they manage the day by day? But the focus is to try to get it done. There's no result that, in my opinion, will be acceptable outside of the Panthers completing a three-peat. That is just my opinion there. And feel free to disagree if you want, but that's how I see it for this Florida Panthers team and a legacy. They're already there. And how do they build on it? But that's going to be it for today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Come back tomorrow. We will recap the prospect showcase from Wesley Chapel on who were the standouts there, and we will get you all prepared for Media Day that is going to be happening later on this week. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.